element of the program for today. We covered the smart city in the morning with Keynote as well as focused session, and then followed by mobility with a Keynote as well as focused session, which we just finished now. And now we're starting the third one, which is dealing with healthcare. And then we'll follow that with another focused session. And then we'll have our recap. So basically all the key leaders that have talked this morning will ask some questions and then give you opportunity also to ask some questions. So that will be from 5 to 5:30, and then from 5:30 to 6:30 we'll have more of a showcase and networking opportunity. So all the exhibits that we have in the back, you have more opportunity to have a dialogue with each individual company. So that's just to give you a quick as to what's going forward with. So at this moment, we're very happy to have with us today Professor David Atienza. He's from Switzerland and all the way, and he's actually the chair of CEDA Society in IEEE, and also he's an associate professor, and one of his passion is the whole arena of wearables, and I think has some interesting topic about brain efficiency and how these are correlated. So really looking forward for his presentation. So with that, I'd like you to welcome Professor Atienza.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Maybe I have two hats. So on the one hand, I'm professor at EPFL in the area of computer and electrical engineering, and I'm actually coordinator of one very large European project on smart wearables that I will introduce called Guardian Angels. It was a project we started almost 5 years ago, and that was promoted by the European Commission in the framework, in the Horizon 2020 framework. It's actually finishing this year, but we try to design new type of wearables, and I will try to summarize some of the conclusions that we came from there. On the second hand, I have the hat of member of IEEE. I'm actually a IEEE fellow, but especially I'm president of the Council of Electronics and Automation, so it's pretty much at my heart designing smart systems. So my lab is the Embedded Systems Lab at the EPFL, so we try to make the systems as intelligent as we can. And that's why I try to remove as much as possible the burden of using cloud computing. It doesn't mean that I'm going to find a use for that. I'm going to show you how it can be used in the context of wearables. But it is to try to make use as much as possible of the electronics that we have on the devices, on the wearables. So the reason to do that is because if we look at healthcare perspectives that we have worldwide, we clearly see it's not something I'm going to invent now. For quite a few years already, that the proportion of elderly people is growing. So this is positive on one hand because it means that we live longer. It's negative on the other hand, that actually we get exposed to many more diseases, a different type of diseases that are difficult to treat. They are not just simply problems of viruses or infections, but it's really more long-term diseases, or what is called non-communicable diseases. And these are typically creating a part of having this chronic disease prevalence, where you see more and more people depending on continuous monitoring or long-term monitoring to be able to predict what can be done. And you cannot just simply take a pill and get rid of this. You have to actually find long-term mechanisms to really monitor people and actually prevent gradually how to actually improve the situation. So to do that, I'm not sure if it's working this thing. Let me try to see if I can hold it. It's actually working better. So the main situation with this is that we see that many of these chronic diseases are related to increased healthcare costs, because you have to treat these people not just one time, but really continuously for long periods of time, and it's expected to grow the cost of healthcare from being typically like 2-3% in the last 10 years to actually grow, and it's actually growing already at the range of 5 to 6%. This is actually creating a huge burden on the economy of how to make it sustainable. So the idea when creating this program that was in 2017, how to look at these problems and why we are getting with this healthcare increase. When we look at the causes of death worldwide, we could see that actually almost at that moment, that would be great. Like 50% of the diseases worldwide were already due to these non-communicable diseases, And if we look at the causes of these autoimmune diseases, are typically cardiovascular problems. And one important part that you see there is what is called other non-communicable diseases. This is typically a kind of ballpark that they make for all types of brain disorders. What is going on? It looks very weird. Better like this? So let's see if it was like this. I want to talk on this side. So don't hate me for this. I'm just looking at this side to make sure that the people will hear the story. So if we look at the reasons for these, all these risk factors that create these non-communicable diseases, we see that many of them are related to external events that are typically related to tobacco, unhealthy lifestyle, use of alcohol in extreme cases, and other types of physical inactivity or improper activity. So if we try to think of all this, now we are finding more and more the correlation between all these diseases and these non-communicable diseases in a very clear way. So we need to try to find a way to monitor all these factors and link to the healthy lifestyle of the person. So this requires that it's not typically only about wearables, but it's typically about wearables and the interaction with the environment. So it's just going back to the idea of these smart cities, how you interact all the elements around you, not just yourself. And then, if you think of it, then you can think about also stress. It's a very frequently used word, but the stress refers to all types of factors that are related to driving, work environment, and many different things. And these are actually not even understood fully today, because it requires a lot of external influence. So with that, we created a program called Guardian Angels. We wanted to go away from any kind of IoT or smart wearables. We wanted to really create clear the concept. And that's the idea of the Guardian Angels project that was created in 2016, when the framework program of the European Union H 2020 came into play. And this is basically the idea what we had.
Today, our well-being is our most precious resource. Guardian Angels is a network of quasi-invisible nanosensors that monitor information about you and your surroundings. Tiny autonomous smart systems that integrate into our lives. Small but powerful, advanced nanoprocessors compute parameters such as heart rate and fatigue levels. Information is communicated among microprocessors as well as through smart devices and stored using cloud computing technology according to the strictest privacy standards. Embedded in everyday objects such as cars, interconnected Guardian Angels communicate with traffic, pedestrians, and your vehicle to reduce accidents. Emotional feedback frees us up to concentrate on what is important and helps professionals to stay focused in critical situations. Nature can be hostile and unpredictable. Zero-energy networks and ad hoc communication systems use autonomous robots to guide us away from danger before situations become unsafe. The next generation of communication systems will improve safety, prevention, and assist rescue missions. For Guardian Angels to become a reality, European universities, research centers, and Europe's high-tech industry have joined forces. By investing in the future of everyday technology, Europe will affirm its scientific leadership by bringing discrete, zero-energy devices to all. Guardian Angels, for a smarter life.
So here you see the definition that we have created, that we were not too far away, I think, from some of the ideas that came up today. It was a video from 2015 that came up with the main key ideas that we were trying to develop in the program. There was a program that was approved by the European Commission for 1 billion euros. That the idea was to actually empower both academia and industry, but basically on working together in many different angles. So for the part of wearables, that was I was in charge, not because it's here really highlighted, but it's the part I was in charge. It was 100 million, so what we have to distribute between different companies and institutions. And the idea here is that you need to really have, as you saw in the video, all these sensors continuously monitoring and working together to be able to come up with something. And then eventually, and that's why I say eventually, if you remember the word, there was intelligent nanosystems that actually also communicate with the environment. And that one is when you actually have to go to the cloud. You have to go to the cloud to be able to do larger scale big data analytics and machine learning frameworks to improve the way that these nanosystems actually work. And that's what I'm going to try to illustrate. So to be able to make this thing, how to make this thing work today. So if we think about the systems and the wearables in the future healthcare, what you need to really address is this idea of continuous and reliable health surveillance, what you can see on the problems that we have observed that we have. And this requires three fundamental challenges that we need to address today. Still there, we are in the process, but you see some of them that are the key aspects. I'm going to illustrate you how we should actually go for them. So one is long-term monitoring. So clearly you cannot have wearables, anything you can buy today, hundreds of wearables. There are more than 3,000 certified wearables that you can buy today. It can be watches, bands, there's bracelets, there's plenty of things, but all these things don't allow you to do long-term monitoring. And these are because they are not properly designed. I'm going to illustrate in a second why. Finally, the second one, you have to actually make them reliable and personalized. What does it mean? You can make a great detection of the possible heart attacks and so on that work for 95% of the population, but the problem is that the other 5% are the ones that actually are really in danger. And this one you have to really find a way to personalize the system, and that we can use deep learning in order to help the system happen. And finally, you want to make sure that you improve the user experience. You cannot make the system work by having a guy with 20 gadgets all around the body and trying to make sure that it moves with that. And I can say, well, do we have standards for really doing that? Yes, we have. If we look at epilepsy, that's one of the main diseases that we have been looking at in the last 5 years, you have devices that look reasonable, I would argue, and they actually monitor very well. So these are the reasonable devices. These are the EEG cups that are medically certified to prevent having epileptic seizures. Would you wear these ones? And that's the situation. 90% of the patients say, no way you're going to do that. So maybe in a few years it will be very fashionable, but today it's not really something that you will use on the street. So no way you're going to convince people to use that. So you have to make sure that you give something that is reliable, but also at the same time convenient for you. So otherwise you're not going anywhere. So we look at the problem of having this idea of long-lived wearables by having these sensors, and we have been working with Apple for quite a long while on this. And we came up with the conclusion that no matter how you do it, if you do ECG streaming and you send all this wearable data to the cloud to do complex analysis, you will never be able to last more than 17, 18 hours. In the extreme cases, we managed to do 24, in some cases with very thick watches and so on, which are not very convenient, but you can manage. The reason is because no matter what you do, sending data out of the device is extremely powerful, it's extremely power hungry. So you can actually do almost 64,000 computations with the same cost that you do today sending 16 bits out. So you can do plenty of things on the devices. So that's the idea. So turn it completely different way and try to do things on the device. Even more interestingly, when we started looking at that, you open the device, I wouldn't say just to do this at home, but if you do it and you try to realize where the energy is going, you find that most of the energy in current medical devices today are not going into even analyzing the data or transmitting. It's actually just on sensing and sampling data. So you get plenty of data, very often completely useless. In the sense, it's not going to give you anything new from what you know, but you still get the data according to the standards that you have today in place. Now, the idea is how can we change that? Well, first of all, we can of course change this. We have to only get and keep all the useful data. And useful data is a bit tricky question, because when you talk to doctors, every doctor will tell you something different, what is useful or not useful. But you have to come up with something that, if you use specifically machine learning and deep learning, that the doctors need to understand if this is useful or not, according to what they would like to do. You say, the answer of the neural network is, yes, it's going to have an epilepsy attack in 5 minutes. The doctor will say, how do you know that? If you cannot explain that, the deep learning is not going to go anywhere. So now, after looking at that, we first have to make this thing understandable and give the useful data. And second, you have to really make it low power. You cannot really go around asking people to change the devices every 5 minutes. And also because you will not have even enough power in the world to actually have all these billion of devices that were mentioned this morning. There was not going to be 20 billion as they claim. Right now the expectation is 7 billion, because we're getting more devices, more intelligent. You don't need to have 20 around you. But still, you want to make a big change. And that's why comes the part of the brain. If you look at the brain, or typically they call it brain, but for me, call it the nervous system. If you think about the nervous system, the peripheral and the central nervous system, we don't do much with the brain. In the sense, there are plenty of additional sensors all over our body, more than 10,000 elements that are computing elements, if you want to take it from that point of view, that do things not because of the brain, does not want to, but because it's unable to do this, all this in the real time that is needed for being able to access or take decisions that are needed. Okay? So because of that, you need to change completely the way that we do the design of these wearables in a way that the data should be treated as much as possible locally to be able to have low latency and reaction, but also at the same time to increase privacy. You have to send all the data to the cloud. there are many more risks that the data gets hacked and gets actually intervened, whereas if you treat it locally, the owner of the data is the user, and the user can decide what is needed to be done. So that's what I'm saying. Let's look at the brain efficiency, how it works. So the idea here is to use what I call fog AI. This is a term that was created by Cisco a few years back. And the idea is not really what they define, because the idea is to get rid of the cloud. Obviously, Cisco is very interested in getting rid of the cloud because you have more routers and more things to spread out. But this is not the idea. The idea is that the concept of fog AI is that you have a combination of multiple sensors that you activate whenever they want. And when I mean sensors, I mean you can have a smartwatch, but you can have glasses. You can have other types of devices that you activate whenever you need them, and they all together come up with a certain definition or analysis of the status of the person. And when something goes wrong or is not clear what happens, then they communicate to the cloud and they ask for help. Interestingly enough, when they do that, what they can do is that the cloud can retrain the system, find out what is actually possible that has not been detected properly, and retrain the devices even more locally. So how does the system work? Well, let me show you an example. So first thing, let's look at the issue of sampling. So if we look at sampling, we say we don't want to be sampling all the time. The nervous system doesn't do that, in fact. It's 1,000 times more energy efficient than our computing system because it doesn't sample almost anything. If you look at the neurons, you think over time, any stimuli that comes to the neurons, they typically have a certain threshold of amplitude of current. So if you don't activate that, even if there's a stimuli or something, they will never do anything. So these neurons will be completely in resting state. They will be just simply not burning any power because this is not a meaningful enough event for them to do something. Now, when there is a peak event of something that is really very dramatic, that can change really the status of the system, they will actually react. So they are really event-driven. What we need to create is our new electronics being really event-driven, which actually we don't have right now. Well, right now you put a medical device, the medical device will sample regular intervals, which has been understood that actually was medically certified. Now the key question here, are we missing points that we sample sporadically whenever we think there is a clear event? And that's what I'm going to try to show you that is possible. So can we design event-driven wearables? So there's the idea, for example, let's take one of the most important ones, let's take an ECG. Here everybody knows what an ECG looks like, so this is how an ECG looks like. So the main point that the doctor will look at is the points that you see labeled as PQ or ST. These are the main peaks that are relevant for the doctor. Of course, you have something happening in the QRS, basically when the blood comes out of your heart, you're in the hospital, but still, if you want to monitor completely, you have to monitor all these points. Now, if you look at all these points and you try to analyze the signal, it's very complicated in the frequency, in the time domain. This is over time, the samples, but if you project it in the frequency domain, which is basically what we do in the end with many of the analysis on the doctor space, you see that actually this is how it looks like. So there are particular parts of the signal that are really having a very high frequency or high amplitude, and these are the ones that have a lot of information. The other parts, the intervals in between, are not really giving you much information. So you shouldn't actually use them. And in fact, that's what happens. What happens in medical devices today, you get the sample frequency by a typical sampling frequency of 1 kilohertz for the heart, and then when you pass through the biosignal analysis system, they get rid of all the signals that you don't need, and they just take the points that they need. This is what they do, for example, with wavelets. If you look at wavelets, that's actually how it looks. So these are the frequencies that you want to keep. So what they will do, they will change the representation and try to find the useful ones. So clearly, sampling at a very high frequency is suboptimal because you're wasting a lot of energy sampling data you don't want. And this is actually what you will keep. So if I take a sample of 2 seconds, this is 512 samples. From all these 512 samples, how many samples do I really need to keep? Typically around 30, 35. That's the maximum that we need to keep. So basically, all the rest, I'm sampling and I'm consuming energy in the front end to get nothing out of that. So that's what we need to change. So if we do that, then we can actually also reduce a lot the complexity of the sensors, because if we only analyze these 34 or 32 samples, we only need to focus on this, so it's much cheaper to do the computation than doing 512 samples. And then if we do that, then suddenly we can make a system, embedded wearable, that can do everything, including the noise filtering, because it gets rid of many of the noise because it doesn't really care about these points, only the ones that are needed. Then we can use machine learning embedded in the device to do the delineation of the important points, because there are only 32 to really look at. And finally, we can also look, and that's the tricky angle, very often we need to have a lot of inputs from the doctor, and this is the part that is more involved, having really interdisciplinary collaboration, because the doctor will tell you what they look at, and every patient is a bit different. So that's why you need to have the deep learning and big data analytics actually on the cloud, to convince the doctor and the doctors to explain you what they want to measure. Okay? So now once you do that, you can actually make the system really work. And finally, if you need additional computing power, you can do it on the phone. You can do additional analysis on the phone before you actually have to send it to the cloud. You think about the phone is a very powerful system these days. It has 8 processors, a GPU with another 4 cores, a neurochip, which is what they actually are selling now, which is for machine learning. Interestingly enough, most of the machine learning algorithms for medical are exactly the same thing as for video. So I can use exactly the same accelerator that you use for video for running some of my machine learning algorithms for medical devices. Now, if you do that, you can also compress and so on. How do these processors look like? So they are not anymore like this single microcontroller small thing. So these new wearables that you have, although they are very tiny, as you can see in the picture, they are something like 0.5 centimeter square, where you have a separate chip. It includes one main processor that does most of the analysis, simple analysis or filtering. And then you have, for the complex machine learning algorithms, you have 8 processors running in parallel, low frequency but in parallel. Plus, if you have for particular medical applications, you have the processor synchronized, you have a synchronizer that includes a specialized neurochip accelerator for particular algorithms that actually are confidential or privately proposed by the certain company. So, as you see, this is a really powerful system. You can do plenty of things there now. You have reduced the volume of data, you can run most of the algorithms that actually in the past used to become only on the cloud, you can run them now locally. Now, if I can do that, does it work? Well, here's an example of a system that we did. It was a spin-off that we did at the lab 4 years ago. We actually had this chip designed in collaboration with Samsung and Apple that were actually not the actual companies, but the venture capitalists around them. So we showed that we could actually make a system that could analyze electrode-based systems, that what the doctor wanted to see. Then later on we moved to show that we can actually do the same thing. Instead of with 3 points and ugly electrodes, we can do it with a polar bear that is much more comfortable for the patients. And you can get pretty nice delineated signal directly. Keep in mind that this is not on the phone is just the display, but actually the whole delineation is done on the device, the little thing that you saw there. So this represents your full medical equipment for doing ECG cardiogram analysis. And the last one that we had done in 2019, and of course something happens, the device will send an email to the medical doctor, to the MD with actually the screenshot of what has been identified and a little set of the data that needs to be analyzed in real time. Now, the last thing that we had done, you can actually make a patch. This is a wearable patch that is actually used in Switzerland, in some of the hospitals there near Lausanne region and Geneva. And in fact, because we are very close to Lausanne, to the Olympic Committee, they are thinking about asking especially cyclists to use it when they actually are claiming that they are not dope and so on in the competitions, just to tell you that. So that can be all. So the idea here is you can do plenty of things. Now the main issue for that is that you have the medical authorities that very often they argue and they say, how do you certify that the medical outputs of these machine learning algorithms are correct? And it took us basically 1 million samples to actually convince the CE certificate to actually give us the correct issue for the particular device. And it's not that we convinced them, I think we bored them because we gave them so much data. They said, look, all this data is correctly analyzed. They never came up with anything that could not be in this set. They said, okay, fine. So you get the CE certified. But it's really very complicated to go to this point. Now, this goes to the final point that I wanted to treat in this session now in the afternoon is, how do you train these new smart devices? You can do it, but you have a very important need, which is to have labeled data. And labeled data is very difficult these days. So why do you need labeled data? Because any of the algorithms that use for medical AI or medical devices use what is called supervised learning. What does it mean? It means you need to have the data that you want to convert to, the golden truth. You need to have it labeled by medical doctors or specialized personnel that tells what is was supposed to be the right detection of pathology that should happen. And because of that, you don't need to have a lot of medical personnel behind this, analyzing the data. It's a lot of money. And you don't have enough time to do that, so you don't have enough resources to actually put to create this medical data. Besides, of course, problems of privacy. Now, the idea is, can we actually have this deep learning using another way of creating personalized data? Because on top of that, you have data from many patients, but you want to have the data from one particular patient, you want to have it for you, to be able to train it for you, the device. So that's the idea. So the idea is to use this fog AI computing in a way that you can use data self-generated for you. So this is the last thing that I wanted to illustrate. So let me take the case of epileptic seizures. Epileptic seizures is a very important disease that is very often, like I show you, only reliably monitored. You put these ugly hats or caps, better said, and then you can only typically do it in the hospital, okay, or at home. But you basically are confined to not to go to the street anymore. So that's not really useful. So the idea here is that what we want to have is a system that starts using devices, and when the devices are not confident with a single use of the device, then it starts moving up, it starts asking for more help, you start using more than one device all together. When these devices are not really able to figure out something else, then you move it further in the screen, and you actually send it to the cloud to be further analyzed. Okay? So for that, what we have done, we have developed recently a pair of glasses. This pair of glasses, instead of having the 32 sampling points typically of the caps, it has only 4 points. So the first thing we're going to see doctors is, this is not going to work. You need to have at least 32 points to monitor properly EEG. Only with 4 points you're not going to be able to capture most of the pathologies. So we did that. So we tried to see how to fix that. So we trained the system with a bunch of data that we have from the SHUP, actually from 1,000 patients, and everything, this complex algorithm that is running on this smart edge device that is running on the glasses. Now, we created the system, we actually have the system being trained here. Like I showed you, we can compare the data that we acquired from different patients versus the glasses and so on, and we got pretty good results, I would argue at that point, much better than what the doctors would expect after you train it properly. And for most of the patients, reaches around 85%, almost 90% of accuracy. However, there are patients, first of all, this is not enough for medical certification, just to make it clear. Second, there are patients which actually are pretty poor. And these patients, we didn't have an answer why the system was not working properly. So also because getting epileptic seizures, some data is not so easy. You have to put somebody, to me it's almost human torture. You have to put it in a hospital, you have to remove all the prescriptions and leave it there. The poor guy after a week, then starts having epileptic seizures. Well, yes, you can develop medical devices like this, but I find it a bit of an extreme case to really create something personalized. And actually, you only get 2 or 3 seizures per month, so you actually have the patient for quite a long period. So the idea here that we had, can we do something that is actually combining this to make it really something personalized? I said, okay, why not combining, like we say, with the idea of fog AI with other wearables? So what we have done, we made the e-glass. By the way, e-glass is not electronic glass, it's epilepsy glass, just to make it clear, because people think it's e-glass like an Apple phone and so on. It's epilepsy glass. The idea is to have these glasses that are monitoring with a trained data set already and can detect quite a bunch of epileptic seizures versus normal brain activities, but there are a bunch of them that we don't know if it's really noise artifacts or real seizures. At least we have no way to really detect it because the data set that we have is not good enough for the patient. However, the patient can give us feedback. So we have now a watch, that the watch has a very simple app that when a person has an epileptic seizure, the patient can actually inform the glass up to 1 hour after the seizure that something has happened to him. And vice versa, if the epileptic seizure is in principle that nothing happens, the patient can say, no, I didn't have anything. When you do that, the glasses retrain on the fly. Why? Because the person does not have an epileptic seizure all the time, so most of the time the system is idle. So when it's idle, the system is retraining until the next epileptic seizure happens and try to figure out what has happened, why this problem was not correctly detected. In this way, we have been able to move from 87% to 95%. And the more you use it, the better it becomes. Okay? So now, the final thing is still, we have a problem, which is still, even if you use it, the doctor will say, I go back to the first point, you cannot certify this medically because it was more or less, but I don't know when it's going to fail. Imagine the poor guy is driving a car and has an epileptic seizure. How do you know that it's not going to happen? So to be able to certify what the E-class is doing, what we have done is we have run an analogy of what type of algorithm we are running there. So it's a deep neural network, it's a system with 5 convolutional layers and 2 dense layers. And actually, first extract the features with the convolutional layers, and then the 2 dense layers classify you have an epileptic seizure or not. So what we have done, we have found that in reality, if you look at medical devices, there is very little done on this idea of interpretable AI. But there's a lot done in images, because images are not so sensitive for people. And you can find these type of faces that actually exist, and I will Google percentages every now and then. which are actually fake people. And they look very real. So we have used the same idea because what they do in this case, they take actually the images, they project it in a frequency domain interval where actually they look how the system looks like, look at properties that a real face looks like, and we'll try to mimic it. So what we have done is we have taken the epileptic seizures and mapped them in a 2D space, which is like if it was an image. And in the image, we look for patterns, graphical patterns that the doctor will look at, and when you do that, we are able to then trace back the same way they have done to find out the things that for us look reasonable in the face of a human. We find things that are reasonable for a doctor to find in an epileptic seizure. So when we do that, this is what we call a deep lift. And the deep lift algorithm, we want to trace back the epileptic seizure that was detected in the patient and find the sections of the input data that in principle are the ones that have triggered the neural network to detect that. So if we look at the inputs of a certain seizure, you pass these two to a doctor, when the doctor will look at the seizures. Actually, they do it like that. They look at the seizures and graphically will say, is here or here. So we have done with epileptics, with the neural network is to do exactly the same thing. So we will look, the neural network will tell you, this is not an epileptic seizure, the person is fine. And here, no, here it has an epileptic seizure with a certain probability. So what it will actually do is we use our deep lift algorithm and we'll actually mark what are the sections that are really the ones that are triggering the detection by the neural network. And then you can go now to the medical authorities and tell them, this is what we have detected, this is what you would like to find, or is something else? And it actually makes much easier to the authorities to actually certify your device. So we are discussing with them for authorization for CE marking. We only need to have 10,000 samples, which is significantly better than the 1 million that we actually had to do for the ECG, because now the EEG is even more complicated than the ECG. Okay, so this is the second part of the see. You'll see 4AI is not just about really making the devices communicate for the sake of interaction, for really improving each other. So can actually do much better than that in medical devices. Now, to the large extent, if you have all these medical devices, what can you get? You can get personalized healthcare by having what is the virtual twins. This is a new project we have done the last phase of the project, with especially promoted by Philips, which is the idea is to create images or representation of how a person looks like, how the interaction of the different sensors, and try to see how you can actually create personalized interventions for them.
Imagine a future where personalized healthcare will provide every individual the right type of care in the right way and at the right time. Imagine that every patient has a digital twin, a virtual representation of his health status. Let's explore how this could play a significant role when Mr. Clark, who has been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, is seeing Dr. Sullivan, his cardiologist. Although AF is a highly prevalent disease, it can be complicated to decide on the individual treatment strategy for a patient like Mr. Clark. This is where his digital twin comes in. It starts by using Mr. Clark's medical data to create a patient-specific biophysical model, including a virtual version of his heart, which looks, behaves, and reacts just like the real one. Through a seamless flow of data and advanced analytics capabilities enabled by Philips Health Suite, Dr. Sullivan can connect Mr. Clark's digital twin with intelligence on similar cases and select ablation as the therapy with the best possible predicted outcome for him, both on the short and on the long term. Dr. Sullivan carefully plans the procedure by simulating various ablation scenarios on Mr. Clark's digital twin. This enables her to select the one with the optimal computed result. The chosen ideal scenario forms the basis for real-time intervention guidance. During the procedure, all taken actions, as well as any unforeseen situations, are processed real-time into Mr. Clark's digital twin to redirect if necessary. As a result, Mr. Clark received his treatment at the right time, in the right way, with the best possible outcome. This is one of many potential cases in which the digital twin adds value to the healthcare system. From personalized diagnosis and therapy selection to procedure planning and guidance, tailored to the patient's physical characteristics, medical history, current condition, and future needs.
This one is the key idea of how to intertwine basically the different elements that you have with these smart wearables with the cloud. So the idea here, like I said, just to conclude, I would like to summarize the three main takeaways. So basically, the first one is I wanted to explain that in fact it's not about the idea of sending all the data from the sensors to the cloud and treat everything there. Everything has to be treated locally, as much as we can for response time and also for privacy reasons. Finally, when you look at the concept of HAI, which is one of the key ideas that we are exploring now in wearables, and you see many more companies doing it, you see that one single wearable is not enough. But if you combine few of them and you actually give feedback to each of them, you can create pretty personalized systems. And finally, the benefits of cloud computing can really help you a lot. Why? Because there are some parts that you can really treat locally. You will never be able to create this interpretable AI locally on the sensors. But thanks to the fact of having the cloud backend to be able to run these additional tests, you can actually give hints of why this has been treated correctly for a person. So I hope this explained you a little bit the concept, so thank you very much for your attention.